begin the QB Power Hour webinar series. The QB Power Hour is a free bi-weekly webinar series for accounting professionals presented by Matthew Fulton and Dan DeLong, who are very passionate about the industry, QuickBooks, and apps that integrate with QuickBooks. You can find out all the details about the webinar series at qbpowerhour.com. So without further ado, here's Matthew and Dan.
April Fools, everybody. Rachel, where are you? All right. That fantastic.
You got me.
Welcome everybody to a QB Power Hour, and I pulled up the wrong video, the intro video, but thank you for joining us here today. Sorry, today is, I think April Fools is being played on me. I have a very horrible internet. The sound was horrible right before going live. And of course, now I've done some challenging things with the wrong intro video. But here we are. Today, we're going to be talking about daily sales summaries and unpacking the LightSpeed QuickBooks integration. Was for summarizing sales data in point of sale from QuickBooks. My name is Dan DeLong, owner of Danwith and School of Bookkeeping. I worked at Intuit for nearly 18 years, co-hosting today, as well as Workshop Wednesdays and the feature deep. Oh my God, I can't say it. The feature deep dive guest host at the unofficial QuickBooks Accountant podcast. So thank you for joining us here today. Now, normally this would be Matthew joining us today, but unfortunately he's not feeling well. And he sent me a video. I know it's April 1st, and this is not an April Fool's joke, because he had on video, he had his hair all, it's 9 a.m. on his time. So this was like very early in the morning for him to be sending a video. But playing the part of Matthew today is Rachel Doci. Thank you for filling in on such short notice, coming out of the yoga.
I was literally coming out of the yoga room and I was like, no problem. And I ran home.
So for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So in addition to co-hosting Workshop Wednesday with you, where we always talk about something fun every week, my firm is called Net Deposited, and we do all kinds of different bookkeeping and accounting. But one of our focuses, specifically with what we're going to talk about today, with these aggregated sales postings, which we do a lot in e-commerce bookkeeping, and we do a lot of that at Net Deposited, and not necessarily just e-commerce, but even, with everything, it seems like everybody is using a POS system. So we do a lot of that at Net Deposited, and I'm very active in the QuickBooks world, and just happy to be here.
All right. Thanks again for filling in on such short notice. And we did a daily sales summary workshop on the Workshop Wednesday over at School of Bookkeeping. So
yeah, we just did like the other week.
Yeah, so that was like a dress rehearsal for the QB Power Hour, which a little bit of information about the QB Power Hour, if you're just tuning in for the first time, it's every other Tuesday at 12 noon. We are available for a CPE credit, or we do have a channel over at Earmark to be able to get those CPE credit for accounting professionals. We now have 6 prior webinars available there on the Earmark channel. A little bit of the housekeeping. We're going to be talking about the topic of the day. So if you have any specific questions about the topic, please put them in the Q&A so we can make sure that we can capture those. If you're watching on the streaming platforms of YouTube, which, oh my gosh, my computer just restarted. I hate Mac. I'm sorry, I hate Windows machines.
That's why I use a Mac.
Yeah. I was telling my son, Macs just don't crash out of the blue like Windows machines do. So if you hear a jet engine, that's my machine restarting in the background. There it goes. So if you have some Q&A, specific questions about the topic that we're talking about today, please put those in the Q&A. If you have general comments about whether you prefer Mac or Windows, please put those in the comments or the task. And then, of course, we have the handout available there. I know if you can throw those links in the variety of places that we need them to go so that we can do that, because I would have done that on the other machine that just restarted. So here we go. We also have a QB Power Hour store for all your QB Power Hour swag needs, pink hats, wireless chargers, mugs, whatever. So let's talk about what's on the agenda today. Daily sales summaries is we're going to unpack what they are, who needs them, and then do a little demonstration of doing them in QuickBooks Online. And then we'll transition a little bit into LightSpeed point of sale and how they are handling the daily sales summaries. Now, all of this came up because over at School of Bookkeeping, we have a quick answers feature, which allows anyone to chat with us there. And someone came in with a challenge because they were using a Subway. They had a Subway franchise that they were working with, and Subway had its own way to integrate into QuickBooks Online, and it was doing that with a daily sales summary. And very familiar with how this all plays out with the desktop in QuickBooks Online, but it was integrating into QuickBooks Online, and there's a snag. And that's what we really want to unpack here is there's a but when it comes to doing daily sales summaries in QuickBooks Online. And we'll talk about that as it relates to
I think I
tax.
remember. Yeah, it was the sales tax.
Yeah, we'll do that. Now, oh crap, it's going to start. All right. So today is just a horrible technology day. But we did have some prior webinars. We do a series here on the QB Power Hour called Niche Nuances. So I wanted to make sure that those were available in the handouts. We did convenience stores with Alicia Katz-Pollock. She actually literally wrote a book about handling convenience stores. They will typically not integrate with QuickBooks, depending on what software they're using, or if they're just using cash register. So that's a good one to review. And then we also had William English join us to talk about retail. I was looking at this thumbnail too. Look how young we look.
I know.
with Michelle and myself.
And that was
there.
before I knew you too.
Yeah. Yeah,
wow.
I think that was amidst the throes of COVID. All right. So our first whole question, just to get things started here, what version of QuickBooks do you support your clients with? QuickBooks Online or desktop or both? Or whether that is. Now, Rachel, you primarily or solely use QuickBooks Online or desktop, or what is it?
Yeah, I used to use desktop a long time ago. That's where I originally learned desktop. When I learned QuickBooks, was in desktop way back in the day. But when I started my business, Net Deposited, I really wanted to exist in the cloud. So that was 2019. I completely learned QuickBooks Online and never looked back. So I only use QuickBooks Online.
Gotcha. And when we first started, working together, because you specialize in the inventory and retail or e-commerce space, getting these daily sales summaries into QuickBooks is a key workflow in your practice.
It's really key. And with that, I remember I didn't really know a lot of the specifics of why, because most of my clients sell stuff. even though we do support service-based businesses now more than ever because inventory is driving me nutty, but we do support stuff. And there's so many different nuances about dealing with inventory in QuickBooks Online that I really just needed to unravel every little thing and understand what it can do and what it can't do. So there's so many different elements to these sales summaries and why you would need it versus when you wouldn't want to use it. And yeah, that's not really an answer. But basically, there's just so much to know that it's really helpful to zero in on one thing, focus on it, talk about it, understand why it's important to do a summary this way versus that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks like most of the folks agnostic to the QuickBooks platform, about 59% support both, but then like you, 31% solely with QuickBooks Online. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about daily sales summaries, what they are, who needs them, and just unpack that a little bit here. But really what this boils down to is turning the Z out, store close at the end of the day, into a sales transaction into QuickBooks. And that may be something that happens automatically through whatever application that you might be using, or entering it in individually inside of QuickBooks.
Yeah, and I will say that like we talked about this method specifically in the workshop Wednesday, and using a sales receipt entry form in QuickBooks Online is definitely the traditional way. There's other ways to get sales summaries into QuickBooks Online, but I just wanted to say that because I thought that was very confusing when I first started learning it this way. There's journal entries, there's different ways to get it in there, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, the type of transaction that you're going to be entering in these sales summaries is certainly going to either augment or pass the baton to the next workflow that might be necessary, or put a limitation on that depending on what it is that you completely do inside of the QuickBooks ecosystem. So who really needs them? Let's talk about some of the industries that will use those. Maybe the integration is not needed or not functioning, right? So if they're using like a physical cash register, right, there's no way to set that on top of your computer and get it to go into QuickBooks, right? So you're going to have, at the end of the day, you're going to zero out your cash sales or your cash register for that day, and it's going to give you, in general, what was sold, what's taxable, what's not taxable, and the payment methods that you took throughout the day on those cash registers. So that will be one reason for using a daily sales summary inside of QuickBooks. The integration is just not there. Or if they want to do departmental accounting, right? So retail, convenience store, e-commerce, we talked about some of those industries. They don't manage inventory or sales data in two redundant systems. So they're not necessarily needing to track their inventory comings and goings in a perpetual
And that's fashion. Very, very common that we wouldn't do that in QuickBooks Online.
Because as we've talked ad nauseum on the workshop, QuickBooks Online is great for inventory tracking if you're a reseller of goods, but not if you need to know much more of anything else about those goods, where it is, landed cost, all those advanced inventory functions. So if they're not tracking those perpetual inventory, daily sales summaries are okay. Or they're using QuickBooks for category tracking of, again, those departmental things. So there's a little bit of pre-work when it comes to setting up QuickBooks for the daily sales summary itself, right? So first is to create some kind of customer for your counter sales, right? So things that you can call it whatever you want. QuickBooks Point of Sale called it counter sale, right? But you can call that customer or whatever it is, right? You can even do it by register if you wanted to, right? Just creating a customer to put on the sales transaction.
Yeah, and just like we do a lot of Shopify accounting and bookkeeping, and I always just create Shopify customer, and that's if I'm bringing them in and using a sales receipt, and I need to put a customer in the field. We just do Shopify customer.
Yeah, and I saw in the Q&A that somebody was asking for, can we have a Power Hour on Shopify integration with QBO? There's probably about 34 different ways to bring in a Shopify transaction. There's one built in directly into QuickBooks through Commerce. To all of the other ones, I saw another person is using Shogo, and that was actually something that William had mentioned on the prior Power Hour. But the next thing after you set up a customer is setting up your desired chart of account. How much detail or generality are you going to need in the chart of account side of things? So you just want to set up those chart of accounts first, and then set up items. Typically, they're going to be non-inventory items for each source of revenue or each of those items that are going to be pointing to those accounts that you've set up. So this will be your sources of revenue. So if you're going to departmentalize the sales, or just something as simple as these were taxable and these were non-taxable, because you have to have that differentiation on the sales transaction itself as to what was taxable and what wasn't. Payment methods. You can set up items for payment methods, and then sales tax there's a caveat there about sales tax, because that's what's really driving the distinction of doing this inside of QuickBooks Online versus desktop, because QuickBooks Desktop does actually have a payment method or payment item, and those are treated uniquely and distinctly from QuickBooks Online, where QuickBooks Online does not have that type of item when you specify that. So that is a unique distinction between the two, and that's one of the reasons that you don't necessarily want to do a daily sales summary if you're doing sales tax inside of QuickBooks Online.
Yeah. And when you're dealing with multi-state, though, you don't want to use the sales tax center in QuickBooks Online, because that's just, it's not sophisticated enough for that. Can I ask you a question, though? So with regards to LightSpeed, because that's what we're talking about, does LightSpeed specify that you need to have the items set up as non-inventory as such in QuickBooks Online so that it'll find the non-inventory item and then post it if you're doing a sales receipt? Do you have to have those items set up?
Yes. Yeah, you do want to set up those items ahead of time.
Because guess what?
What's that?
I was just going to say, in this world of automation and connectivity, I'm really deep in that. And I'm working with an app right now that you cannot have the item set up. For syncing, it wants to create the item, a non-inventory item, but you cannot have them set up already. So it's so funny because in these, with the differences of the mapping and how things need to be set up to get the data over to QuickBooks Online, they're so wildly different. And so one of them, you have to follow these steps and set up your items ahead of time so it can find the item. Usually in the settings, there'll be, if it doesn't find the item, it will create a new item. And most of them are like that. But now I'm working in an inventory app where Zoho, in that you can't sync anything over if there's an item, a non-inventory item. It's got to be all no items.
Interesting. I know. It sounds like Zoho's a control freak. I'm going to do
Yes.
this my way.
Yeah. So it's really interesting that every time I feel like I have a workflow down, okay, create the customer, set up the desired chart of accounts, set up the items. Oh, now all of a sudden, now I'm working on one where no items.
Yeah, all these different details and nuances of the apps that integrate and how they integrate is certainly not
Yeah.
universal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wildly different.
Right. Now, if you are using inventory and you want to track some of these things, you're going to want to create income accounts and non-inventory items as well. And those will match the point of sale systems. And then if you do purchases, you want those purchases coded to inventory asset, even though inventory is not used for this process. And then you would do periodic adjustments to get those alignments of inventory value into QuickBooks. You wouldn't necessarily use inventory items and track those inventory items because the accounting is going to be all sorts of differently handled. And really, that's the big distinction about this whole process is where's the inventory source of truth? Typically, that's going to be in your point of sale system or somewhere else other than inside of QuickBooks. So you just want QuickBooks to mirror the accounting value that wherever you're tracking your inventory in. You have any thoughts about to add to that?
Yeah. And this is really confusing. I'm telling you, like I encounter people every single day that, and my clients too, that they think they need to track inventory in both. That's a confusing thing that I run into a lot, that they're tracking their ups and downs of quantities elsewhere. And they think that they need to also track the ups and downs and quantities in QBO. And all they're doing is like pulling their hair out, going, I'm going up and down here, and I'm trying to go up and down here, the same thing. No, we don't do it like that. Ups and downs of the individual quantities in your inventory system, whether that's Shopify, whether that's LightSpeed, whether that's wherever, valuation only in QBO on the balance sheet. That's it. We're not even using the inventory valuation. We're not, or the inventory summary report, nothing like that. It is literally inventory is turned off. We have a value of inventory on the balance sheet. That's it, period, end of story. You can, like you said, decrease that inventory with a monthly COGS entry or something if you want to pull that from your system. Like if you're using Katana or something, you can go and pull your monthly cost of goods sold and post them. I typically pull in systems that will push a cost of goods sold entry with every point of sale because that's perpetual inventory. But even still, all you're doing is with a COGS entry, decrease inventory, increase COGS a little bit with every single sale. It's just a balance sheet thing. That's it.
Yeah. Now this slide is the Alice's Restaurant slide. It's got circles and arrows and paragraphs on the back of each one. But so I'm dating myself on that reference for those that may or may not have understood that. But the daily sales receipt, and there's a link here to the Intuit article, and we'll cover that as well. But you're going to be creating that daily sales zero out tape from the point of sale system, and then use a $0 sales receipt to manually enter that into QuickBooks. Now you're going to be depositing it to the deposit to is important because if you put it to undeposited funds inside of QuickBooks, you're going to have all these $0 sales receipts sitting in undeposited funds, and that's a waste, right? So just put it to another clearing account or some other non-undeposited funds account so that when you record these sales receipts, it doesn't clog up your bank deposit screen. And then you want to use sales departments to track all that you want or sales items, those sales items to track the differences that you want. So you would enter in I had a mailboxes, etc. type of client. They had their own unique point of sale system for that. It was a franchise, and it did not integrate with QuickBooks Desktop. He started at the time, and then he didn't want to pay for the integration when he did finally go to QuickBooks Online. But it also gave him the ability to keep track of the numbers. He was very interested in the day's sales, what was going up and going down. So he had created all of these items for faxing and shipping and packaging and but greeting cards. He had those. They have all sorts of little extra things inside of that, the mailboxes themselves. So he wanted to keep track of all of the sales of those different little things. He got it out of his point of sale system. So he would create those items and put them into his daily sales summary. And then after you've got your sales, your overages, your shortages, your gift cards, all the things that you do want to track, which increase the value of this daily sales receipt, then you would put those payment methods as negatives onto the daily sales summary. And that's why you would essentially be entering these daily sales summaries as nothing, as a $0 sales receipt, which would then do the accounting of here's what I sold, and then here's the payments that I received. And those payments are then going to go to undeposited funds or wherever you need them to be deposited so that the money movement then happens. And then we've got the Intuit article linking here. Let's ask our second polling question of, do you use daily sales summaries? Yes, I enter them because of a variety of ways. You can enter them manually. You enter them automatically through an integration, maybe through a utility import, or you need to record the sales by customer, and you wouldn't do that sort of thing. Do you find, Rachel, that it is mostly daily sales for the clientele that you work with? Nope, you're muted. I can't hear you. Oh, we have the same problem as before. Did you turn
What
around?
about now? Can you hear me?
There we go. There
Okay.
you are.
It's half and half. I have people that I do bring in individual sales receipts on automation. And like what I was explaining before, we have certain situations which it'll create the item based on the mapping that I've set up in the original system. And then I have other situations where we have to have the items created, mapped to where we want to go. And it still brings it over on individual sales receipts. I typically, when we're using point of sale, I typically always use a sales receipt. I don't use an invoice because I don't want it to hit undeposited funds. I want it to point to a specific clearing account because, like, for example, if my client's using something like Stripe to collect those payment methods, I want to point it to Stripe clearing because those payouts that are going to come in through Stripe, I want to clear out that clearing. And a lot of times they have more complexity. They have they're using QuickBooks payments also, maybe with invoices they're sending out. So I like to separate those clearings. And for that reason, I'm like, when you're talking about clearing accounts, you're speaking my language. But yeah, and then the other half the people, yeah, we do use a daily sales summary. Usually the connector tools that I use will put it in a journal entry. So rather than pointing to product service items, we're just pointing it specifically to the accounts, revenue, and then the clearing, and then sales tax or something like that. But we do still have situations where we'll literally go in and maybe take a month's data, not a daily one, but maybe for like super simple clients we'll take a month's data and we'll post like a month sales receipt that way.
Yeah. And like you, I think a lot of people it depends.
Yeah.
Right. You don't always do this entering manually. So yeah, I didn't put it in as a multi-checkbox option, but Yeah, so it looks like entering manually is the majority
Yeah,
of
it's
those
still a
that are doing
thing.
them.
Yeah, and it really, the mapping can get complex. Once you do it, you really develop the mind for it, and then you can go in and figure it out. But yeah, I understand it sometimes can be tedious.
All right. This article here is, and I linked in the handouts. This is actually a really good, robust article, really walking you through this very process where it talks about creating the customer for daily sales, setting up the accounts for daily sales. So you're going to have the income accounts, the clearing accounts, overages and shortages for your cash drawer, for those cashiers with sticky fingers or clumsy fingers that drop a quarter underneath the cash drawer or something like that. I'll set those, and then setting up those items that point to it, and then all of the extra items and where they go. As I was reading these things, the check item, I'm not quite sure why it goes to the account of check.
Doesn't seem right.
But I think that would be undeposited funds in here. If somebody got a copy paste happy,
Yeah,
it's just check across the chart here. But unless you have a distinct check depositing process, right? If these are mobile deposits or something like that, but normally that would just go to undeposited funds. And then you would be putting this in as a daily sales template, putting this as a recurring transaction, right? So you would save this as a memorized transaction. And then every day when you have that, the Z out, store close tape or receipt or whatever it ends up printing on, you would then just enter in the amounts just down the list, right? So this sales receipt should be mirroring the exact same format of your Z out tape so that you can just go down the list of the amounts and enter those in. So you start with a $0 sales receipt that has nothing on it, save it as a template, and then just go into recurring templates, use it, and then just enter the amounts, record it, and you're done. Right.
And this is all supposing you don't have something that's automating it for you. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Yes. This is the entering the manually method.
Got it.
That the 37% of our folks are saying that's what they're doing. And then you would go in and enter that. And this, if I can make this bigger. Yes, I can. So this is the breakdown, right? You've got your daily sales income of 1,080 here on this screen. And then the payment methods of cash, check, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, any kind of overages as negatives, which zero that out. Now they do mention here, and I just wanted to go back up here. I saw it somewhere because it was talking about sales tax. Okay, maybe that's down here later. So the next thing is then depositing your daily sales. All of these items of payment methods are going to be linked to wherever they need to go, and that's going to be passing the baton to the next step, whatever that workflow happens to be. And then you're just going to make those deposits, grouping your credit cards together, taking out the fees, whatever it is that you want to be able to do with that deposit. Example, right, where it's bringing in the cash, check, Visa, MasterCard, American Express all in one to make that lump deposit. Maybe you don't go rushing down to the bank every day to deposit your cash, right? Cash is going to accrue or build up inside the undeposited funds, and then you take all of the cash, 3 days worth of sales. Now it's $1,000 some dollars. Then you lump those things together, make those deposits to mirror reality. Now, okay, Now, where did it go? Because I saw it earlier. Let me make this a little easier to see for me, because it said something about, okay, I'm just going to find it here about, there it is. Okay, yeah, it's a little blurb here. Make sure you use your tax rate is set up properly. Is this little tiny thing here, right? So by doing it this way, you can see that, and this is what prompted the whole topic here. By doing it this way, we have our taxable sales of this first item, and then we have negative items as non-taxable, right? So to QuickBooks Online, it doesn't know the difference between the cash check and Visa MasterCard as a negative as the daily sales income line item above it, right? So to QuickBooks, it is recognizing this in QuickBooks as a negative sale, right? So because cash is $327 as a negative and it's non-taxable, when you run your sales tax report, you have positives for the 1080, for the $1,000.80, but then you have these negatives as negative sales. So that's what started this whole conversation. Is someone was having some challenges because they were coming in as sales receipts like this from their Subway franchise, but then he was going to remit the sales tax and ran the sales tax report. The gross sales said 0. For a whole month, it was 0. I think you're muted again.
Sorry.
I saw you say something.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it screws up your sales tax report. It's super frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had gross sales of $87,000, or taxable sales of $87,000, and non-taxable sales of negative $87,000, and thus giving him gross sales of nothing. So that was a challenge for him, because he was using QuickBooks to help him fill out the sales tax reports, and those reports were essentially useless in this manner, right? Because in QuickBooks, it was recognizing the ins and the outs of the sales receipt, a negative and a positive sale, right? Because these items, unlike QuickBooks Desktop, they're not specifically marked as payment items, so it doesn't know the difference between it and a payment, right? So it handles the accounting great, but this is the but of this whole thing. Whoop, where'd it go? There we go. So non-taxable sales or non-sales items are sales items to QuickBooks, and the sales tax reports are a challenge. And the other thing is, you could potentially, so this $1,080 that's here at the top is a summary of all of the sales for that day. This may be 20 different transactions at varying different dollar amounts, which are going to have sales tax calculated at the time of that sale, not at a grand total of 1080. So potentially, by doing it this way also, and counting on QuickBooks to recalculate the sales tax, not putting in your sales tax items on the sales receipt itself, it's going to potentially recalculate your sales tax, and it's going to base its calculation on $1,080, which may have some fluctuations with rounding. So that's another potential issue when it comes to doing it this way and sales tax.
Dan,
now,
what would you say then to somebody I'm doing the bookkeeping for somebody's franchise, or I'm a small franchise owner, and this is the way that I've been taught. This is the way I know how to do it, and I want to put my daily sales receipts in this way. What would you suggest to them?
Yeah, so if you're using if you're using QuickBooks to help you with the sales tax reporting side of things, then a daily sales summary is not the best way to handle that. And I would, as it's a pain, as it would be not just one transaction for the daily sales, it would be the invoice payment avenue, because payments are payments. They're treated as payments, and they don't have the challenges that a negative sales item.
Right. So rather than a sales receipt, you'd have them use an invoice in which there would be a received payment associated with it.
Now, you still potentially could have that same issue by summarizing your sales and sales tax recalculating, but that's all going to also come out in the wash when you actually do the filing, because they are going to ask, and that's going to recalculate as well.
Because doing it that way, all you're seeing on that invoice is income.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Which segues really nicely into how LightSpeed point of sale handles this. And this was one of the things that Matthew and I have been talking about, the direction that we're going to be heading the QB Power Hour to, is really understanding the things that are really important for QuickBooks Online in that ecosystem, because of the shallow end of the pool of the functionality of QuickBooks. It's not designed, QuickBooks Online is not designed to be a point of sale system. So you often need to have other things that synchronize. And we want to get into some detailed analysis of how these apps actually send data to QuickBooks, right? So if you're using something like Bookkeep with LightSpeed, that's going to be handled completely different than if you're using LightSpeed's point of sale and built-in integration. So,
and that's not to say that you
that data shows up in QuickBooks, that's really what we want to unpack with some of these app integrations moving forward.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, that's not to say that you can't use a connector with a point of sale automation tool and do both, because you're only mapping one thing from one and one thing from the other. So I just have to say, this is why I love QuickBooks Online, because like you said, the shallow end of the pool, there's just these functionalities, but it's engineered to work with all of this other stuff. And instead of doing the things in QuickBooks Online, we're now doing the things elsewhere and just funneling the data in there to QBO. And the capabilities are endless. You can grab data from here and from there and put it all together, and it can get really complex. But the whole point is that QBO can support it and QBO can do it. So it's really neat. I love that part of it.
Yeah, and that's the environment that we're in now, right? Especially with something like QuickBooks Enterprise for desktop, a lot of things were done soup to nuts inside of QuickBooks. Now we're with QuickBooks Online and some of the glass ceilings that we're bumping into, you have to have this hodgepodge of technology to integrate into QuickBooks, and you're using QuickBooks as the foundation of your finance and your accounting, but the way that information comes in is going to either allow you to make usable reports or not, depending on how that information comes in. The main thing that I wanted to point out about LightSpeed has taken a page from Intuit. They have acquired other companies and assimilated them into their ecosystem.
We love that, right?
So if you've had an interaction or an experience with LightSpeed, there are a variety of different series of LightSpeeds. Their flagship product right now is called X Series, which is not the LightSpeed from 2, 3, 4 years ago. they have, that is the R series. So just like the amount of QuickBooks that are out there can get challenging, you might want to take a look at it again if you may have had a poor experience, because they understood that it wasn't the greatest thing, and then they went out, found another point of sale system that does work a little better. Because when we talked with William before, he talked about LightSpeed then, and he was using Shogo to integrate because the integration didn't do what he wanted it to do. But to your point, you're not beholden to using only the LightSpeed integration. You could use a sales connector like Bookkeep or Cinder or Agility. A lot of those other connectors or integrators do allow for
they allow for multiple payment methods. So you can use the one of your choosing. And my clients are very particular on the POS system they want to use because of the rates, and that it really, there is flexibility for them to keep using what they want to use.
Just QuickBooks point of sale, LightSpeed specializes in hard goods. So, things that are actually available to tangible to hold and whatnot. Those are their industries that they specialize in. I did hate the fact that they said the word seamless integration.
I know you do hate that.
That is a trigger word for me, but their integration is actually pretty good, with the exception of inventory adjustments, but we're not talking about that. But LightSpeed does allow mapping to QuickBooks Daily Sales Summary items. This is just a screenshot here of their integration page. So you have the drop downs, and that will pull in the item listing from your QuickBooks. So you can map to specific items listed here. So that's one of the things with the pre-work in setting up QuickBooks and LightSpeed, is that you do have to set up those items ahead of time. Otherwise, you won't see them to be able to map them to. This one here with the product types, this does allow you to map LightSpeed product types to QuickBooks, right? So if you departmentalized your inventory inside of LightSpeed, you can set up those items so that you have, if it's a clothing store, you've got shirts and men's and pants and all those different types of items. You can map those independently.
Oh, that's awesome! Awesome.
And then what LightSpeed does is it sends the cost of goods sold to QuickBooks on a daily basis as well. It's one transaction. It's a journal entry. It's not split out like that department. So just keep that in mind. And it also sends purchase orders, store credits, sales on account, all those things that you would be doing inside of the point of sale system over to QuickBooks. And it does it automatically, right? And as soon as you close the register, it creates that sales transaction over in QuickBooks. You don't have to go and click on something that says send to QuickBooks or anything like that. As soon as you do the task that you're doing, whatever that is, that's the trigger to get it over into QuickBooks. And then it also allows for mapping of specific sales tax items, right? So you don't have that rounding or recalculation, because when you point it to the right sales tax item or the sales tax method inside of QuickBooks, it's just going to take the amount that was collected and put that dollar amount in there. It's not going to allow QuickBooks to recalculate and potentially have this rounding issue of pennies and cents. So its daily sales summaries are created as invoices, and the payment methods are created as customer payments applied to that invoice, right? You're not going to have this problem with sales tax by using the LightSpeed built-in integration. And this is not something that you have to pay for extra, right? It's just one of the the levels of QuickBooks. If you have accounting integration, you would just get the flavor of LightSpeed X series that allows you to do that. if you find that you need your details or you need something else, then you would purchase the one that doesn't have that, right? So it's not something that and there's other things that come in with that flavor of Lightspeed as well.
Why do
They
people
are
have till discrepancies?
till discrepancies?
It drives me crazy.
That requires a human to do things. So humans make mistakes, whether it's counting the money or fraud or dropping things. I worked at pizza all through college. I dropped coins all over the place. So that comes in at the end of the day when you're sweeping, right? Oh, there's where it went.
All I'm doing is exposing myself to be so very anal.
All right. They are offering a promotion actually
very cool.
this month for 3 months of the service. And one of the things that I really like about Lightspeed as well is they charge their customers for an implementation. They give 5 sessions of training to train the store. So you don't have to tell them how to use all this stuff. Then they break it down in 5 different topics of sales and inventory management and e-commerce and those types of things. And then they charge them, I think it's $300 to do the implementation, but upon completion of those 5 sessions, they get it back.
Oh, right? So that's really cool.
They know, and they realize that if people don't know how to use it, they're not going to use it, and they're going to cancel. I kind of wish QuickBooks would do this kind of.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll charge you $500 to figure out how to train you how to use these things and have on-demand sessions. And then when you complete it, then you get that money back. And then it gets people a little bit more familiar with the product and using it. Now, one of the things I want to mention about these sessions is those people are very focused on using Lightspeed, and as they should, right? Like they know how to use Lightspeed. They don't know how it's going to all integrate and respond to QuickBooks. So first time that I did recommended this to a client, I sat in on those sessions so that I could be available to help explain and understand a little better, right?
Yeah, that sometimes happens.
And if they are using something else, another point of sale system, they will migrate the data, customers and vendors and their items into their Lightspeed to get it set up for them.
Hey, Dan, quick question. Do you know if you can use Lightspeed within e-commerce channels?
Yes. It actually, the way that they explain it is they've had a Shopify integration longer than Shopify has had an integration with its own product.
Because let me tell you, the fact that Lightspeed can separate by product type in Shopify is a very big deal. And those most e-commerce connectors can only grab the class or location. And so if it can grab something like the product type, I haven't seen anything else that can do that. I'm gonna go in and do some research on this, because if you can map the Shopify product type to its own product service item and thus its own income account, that's huge. You can separate things on the P&L. I have a client where I literally go in and do it manually because I haven't found anything that I can separate by Shopify product type. Yeah,
and another point of interest is that every register it creates a daily sales summary for each register, and e-commerce channels are considered a separate register as well. So when those e-commerce sales come in to the Lightspeed, they will be sent as a separate customer over into QuickBooks as well.
That's very cool. And really what I mean is on the P&L, like for your clients, it's so cool. You can have like Shopify sales, but then you can have furniture sales, hardware sales,
Yeah.
wallpaper sales. And you typically can only do that on the vertical, like by the class. So that's cool.
Exactly. And as I said, so this is the inside of I updated my Mac, so now it's asking me all sorts of questions as well. But this is the QuickBooks app settings inside of LightSpeed. This is where you can just click the drop down and find the mappings. If you wanted to map the product types, you would have to, I think, to your point, if it's a Shopify product type, you would have to map those product types as well inside of the inside of
you'd have to
LightSpeed.
map them ahead of time. But yeah,
as long as they're mirroring what you have at Shopify, then of course it's going to send those things over as you tell them to, and then your expense information, any liabilities that you have, gift cards, store credit, those types of things that you want to map specifically to. Again, you just make sure that those items are set up in your QuickBooks to handle the accounting, because that's what LightSpeed is going to be using when it sends it over. There we are, right on time. And I just wanted to mention that this all came up because of a quick answers that somebody reached out to us over at School of Bookkeeping. So if you have questions, you want to get some support, you can do that over at School of Bookkeeping as well. And maybe your topic is going to be featured on a future QB Power Hour. So let's real quick, Noah, go ahead and launch the last poll question, which is, was this information useful? Did you learn something new? Rachel, was it useful for you?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I didn't even really, I'm familiar with LightSpeed, but really getting to see the differences of what it can do. Oh my gosh, I'm very impressed, because I haven't really looked at their settings.
There's no silver bullet for one size fits all anymore.
No, there's not.
And that's really what we want. And that's what we really want to unpack and compare for these workshops and the Power Hour that we're doing here, is really getting into how this data, as much as they would say, works with QuickBooks and integrates with QuickBooks. In what way? The biggest example is, as our friends at Bookkeep, we've used Bookkeep before. They will only bring in transactions as journal entries, right? Mm-hmm. They do a really good job of that. But if you are using something like sales tax, or functionality that requires QuickBooks to have its functionality, that isn't the best solution to bringing that data over. There are some things that it will do really well, but understanding how that information gets over, that's really things that Matthew and I are going to be focusing on with the QB Power Hour moving forward. Rachel, I really appreciate you at such short notice filling in and coming in, and hopefully the folks that watched, I can't tell because my computer restarted in the middle. Everything happened. But we really appreciate you all joining us here today on the QB Power Hour. Next time, on the 15th, fully expect not everybody to be showing up here, because that is the tax deadline of April. We'll be talking about some QuickBooks Online updates, or QuickBooks ecosystem updates. We'll be talking about the tag migration and the death of tags.
Yeah, that's going away.
And we'll be fielding some questions out of the Facebook group. So appreciate you joining us here today, and we'll see you next time on the QB Power Hour. Have a great day, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed listening to the QB Power Hour podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in our Facebook group. You can find those resources and much more at qbpowerhour.com.